Dan, Catherine. We're here to celebrate a life, the life of a man who was bigger than life and whose spirit lives on, touching each and every one of us still. Where do we begin to tell of Dan Flood? Dressed in all white, he showed his theatrical flair. He played Tondaleo in White Cargo. People described him with words like dapper and flamboyant. He was the white Cadillac outside the Union Hall, and he was the best Irish coffee at the best St. Patrick's Day dinner ever held. The world was his stage, and all his life he played the lead and never shunned the spotlight. Oh, I remember so many times before going to the well of the House of Representatives to bring up a very complex bill. Everybody would stand around tense and wonder not if we were going to get it passed. And if Dan were managing the bill, he would look around just before the gavel came down to begin the session, and he would say, "Gentlemen, curtain up." He always gave us his all. He never let the audience down, and he never let his constituents down. He did so much. You know, when the circus came to the nation's capital, people took their children and they watched from the sidelines. Not Dan. He rode the biggest elephant, complete with cape and cane and top hat, and led the parade around all the rings as the circus made its way around. Of course, he had the biggest smile of anybody in the audience, and of course, he got the most thunderous ovation. And at the end of the parade, I used to just love to be near him, because as he finished that round to the thunderous applause, he would say, "If only Shakespeare could see me now." Only Dan called President John F. Kennedy Jack, and Secretary of Defense Robert F. McNamara, Mac. He was a fighter-turned congressman, and he loved a good fight. He had the biggest hands that I have ever seen. And guess what, friends? He had the softest touch that I've ever seen. He came to Washington because he wanted to help his neighbors, and he did. It was the Flood-Douglas bill for distressed communities. There was the back lung bill. There was money for cancer research. There was money for mine safety. Those big hands were helping hands. And they were always, Catherine, always there. He was, as has been said, a cardinal in the College of Cardinals. That was the select body of men who decided where federal dollars would be spent. And he always used the word powerful when he talked about the Appropriations Committee. And Dan was a powerful, extraordinarily powerful man. But friends, he used that power on behalf of black lung widows, the fellow next door who was down on his luck and lost his job, the college student, the senior citizen, the tired and the sick. He used to say, "I have lots of power, chum. Lucky I'm a nice guy. I can help a lot of nice people." And he did. He was also Dean Flood, dean of our Pennsylvania congressional delegation. Oh, he could charm an admiral or a general, and he could terrorize a bureaucrat or a politician. If it was for Pennsylvania, he was your friend. Don't touch Toby Hanna. And one of his great efforts, don't give away the Panama Canal. I often think that if Dan were in the Senate, we'd still be arguing about whether or not to cede the Panama Canal. No doubt his finest hours came amidst our darkest hours. When the floods of Hurricane Agnes ravaged our towns in 1972, Dan announced to the world, "This is one flood against another, and I intend to win." And he did. He led the healing and the recovery. He got people back in their homes and back on their feet. His success was our reward. And I think it's so fitting that we celebrate this life in an extended period of remembrance for both Memorial Day and D-Day, and that we commend Dan's life and his stewardship. He joins those heroes, Catherine, who have given their last full measure of devotion to their country. Oh, we all know Dan is an old Shakespearean actor. And I went to Shakespeare to see if I could find something that summed his life, and I think maybe I have. Words from Julius Caesar. His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, this was a man. For Dan loved his country. He loved his neighbors. He especially loved his Catherine, the First Lady of our hearts. And we extend our love and our support and our thanks, Catherine, for being the support system for Dan through times good and through times bad. And while that rich and beautiful voice has now been stilled, let's lift our voices in praise of a gentle life, live fully and completely in the service of his fellow man. We say to all the world, this was a man. We bid him peace and rest.
My father is James Lenahan Brown, who was Dan's partner, and next to Catherine, his best friend. Dan was like a second father to me, and my sisters, and Catherine was like a second mother. Catherine has asked that I express her sincere thanks and gratitude for all the cards, flowers, and support that she has received over the last several days. Catherine, Dan will be missed by all. Reverend clergy, distinguished public officials, many of whom serve with Dan, ladies and gentlemen, and most of all, Catherine. The golden life of public service in caring for his fellow man has come to an end. The splendid prayers from his church, the eloquent tributes from his fellow public officials, and the unending admiration of the people of his region provide more than adequate testimony to the accomplishments of the giant who goes to his resting place today. No obituary, no eulogy, no tale of glory, or any political success could ever equal the affection, care, and decades of leadership which Daniel J. Flood provided to his people. 14 years after his retirement, following 32 years in the United States House of Representatives, there has been produced for us not only a legend, but a standard of excellence to which all of us, be it in public affairs, private business, in our homes or in our families, must forever aspire. In over 3 decades in Washington, more than 100 men and women obtained their livelihood, their experience, their motivation for higher calling because they worked for Congressman Dan Flood. None of them could ever forget him, just as none of the tens of thousands who were touched in some way by his larger-than-life leadership will always have Dan Flood to inspire them. Those who were privileged to serve in his office in Wilkes-Barre or in the Cannon Building in Washington all in some way felt that being part of the Dan Flood team was an experience of a lifetime, and it was. It was, day and night, whether in the glories of another election victory, or flying in a helicopter to land in the mud of Agnes, or taking the eloquent words of dictation which identify with the substance and style, or in the reaching out to the small citizen who had no one else to turn to. These were the great experiences of life with Dan Flood. Now, gathered at the north end of Wilkes-Barre, in the church where he married the most dedicated woman of his dreams, here to say goodbye to the temporal presence of Dan Flood, we know truly that this region and its people will never say goodbye. Their memories will never fail them. Their libraries will forever give testimony, and the splendid edifices he built will always be evidence to the fact that Dan Flood was among us. I, too, thought of Shakespeare. You could not think of Dan Flood for too long and not think of Shakespeare. Now, the final curtain comes down. The stage of life on which he was a megastar is going dark as his leading lady looks on. He was a man inspired by Shakespeare who was proud to call himself a Shakespearean actor. In bidding adieu, no greater words could be summoned than those of farewell which William Shakespeare penned in The Merchant of Venice. Good night, sweet prince, and may flights of angels beckon thee to thy rest.
I would just like to say a brief word on behalf of that valiant lady sitting in the front row. I have never heard my Aunt Catherine complain about her life, because life with Dan was perfect as far as she was concerned. Much has been written of the glamorous side of her life, very little of the tragic, and there's been much of it in her life. Few people know that she, I hope I can get through this, lost her beloved mother when she was 12 years old. A scant 10 years later, a sister who died much too young. The very next year, she lost her beloved papa. In all, she's lost 4 sisters, 2 brothers, a brother-in-law, a sister-in-law, and what we used to refer to as her faithful friend and Indian companion, Naomi, of 35 years. But, as they say in the song, this time, Lord, you've given her a mountain. But she'll overcome this too. And those of us who love her are concerned about her today. And would like to share with you the words of a favorite poem of Dan in hopes that it may sustain her. It's written by Elsa Pascal Robinson, and it's called To Those We Love. If I should ever leave you whom I love to go along the silent way, grieve not, nor speak of me with tears, but laugh and talk of me as if I were beside you there. I'd come, could I but find a way. But would not tears and grief be barriers? And when you hear a song, or see a bird I loved, please do not let the thought of me be sad, for I am loving you just as I always have. You were so good to me. There are so many things I wanted still to do, so many things to say to you. Remember that I did not fear. It was just leaving you that was so hard to bear. We cannot see beyond, but this I know. I loved you so, 'twas heaven here with you. We all know of Dan's support of and love of the theater. And with that in mind, may I ask you please to rise and offer with me one final standing ovation.
Before we go our separate ways, let us take leave of our brother. May our farewell express our affection for him. May it ease our sadness, strengthen our hope. One day we shall joyfully greet him when the love of Christ, which conquers all things, destroys even death itself.
Joey will do the incense.
We are now